welcome, Serena. Thank you so much for being here, and yeah, introduce yourself and then start the presentation when you're ready. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Hello, everybody. So my name is Serena Williams, and I founded Bump and Glide a few years ago now, after having had a 12-year career in the luxury goods industry and communication and HR roles. What I'll talk about today is mainly through my own lived experience. I realise that the support around becoming a mum when you've had a career nowadays isn't quite there yet, and I'm going to explain, the different areas of why I think that is, and why what I'm doing kind of fills the gap of what companies can do to help their employees at this time, and also help individuals at that time as well. So I'm going to try and share my screen now. We had a little test earlier. So can you see that screen?
Yep.
Okay. So
yeah, we just need to play the presentation so it brings us presentation.
Okay.
There we go.
Brilliant. So I thought to start off with, we could start with a little quiz just to make it a bit fun. I find that a lot of people complain about the challenges around motherhood, which I understand because it's tough. However, I'm not here to complain about it. I'm trying to build awareness around why things are tough, and actually what we can do to help. So if you either want to jot down with a pen and paper whatever your answers will be as I read them out, or we can make it interactive and shout out what you think the answer could be, and then we can have a little discussion about it. So first question, what is the annual cost, do you think, of perinatal mental health issues in the UK? Do you think it's 8.1 million, 5.4 billion, or 8.1 billion?
I like a middle number, so I'm going to go 5.4. I don't know what that says about my personality, but
Anybody else have any?
Mental health, perinatal mental. Okay, I'll say
number one.
Number one?
2.
Okay. 2. So the answer is actually number 3.
no way.
So every year
Serious.
it costs society 8.1, and this is the UK alone, 8.1 billion pounds in perinatal mental health issues, which will all become clear as I go through the presentation. But I just thought it useful to get an idea of these figures before I get started. So the second question, how many women experience a mental health problem during pregnancy or after they've given birth? Do you think it's 1 in 8, 1 in 5, or 1 in 10?
I bet it's 1 in 5.
Yeah, number 2 for me.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
More.
1 in 5, yeah, so 1 in 5 at the moment. I think personally, from all the research and things I'm reading and hearing, I think that's actually going to become more due to the pandemic and due to just current, society support and the stress on the NHS, etc. So hence the reason why this support is actually really crucial. Question number 3, what are the most common of all serious health complications of maternity? Back pain and incontinence, stomach pain, or depression and anxiety?
Number 3.
Number 3.
Yeah, 3.
Yeah, unfortunately, well, I mean, none of those would be good, obviously, but unfortunately, depression and anxiety is the most common. And again, due to the pandemic, a lot worse, which I've seen in my clients recently as well. The final question, do you think this is true or false? There is strong evidence linking parental mental health and the long-term development of children.
True.
It has to be true.
Absolutely true.
You see it so much.
Oh yes, definitely true.
Just so evident. It's frighteningly evident.
It's frightening, and I think the impact of stress on parents, so it's not just mothers. I think my focus, as you'll see, is very much on mothers, but obviously there's a huge impact from the fathers as well. My own personal experience, whenever I'm stressed, I notice that my children stop playing up a little bit more, and I think, oh, why are they playing up so much today? And then you kind of, sit down with yourself, have a few breaths, and if you can calm yourself down, it almost regulates them as well. So So that was just a little quiz to just kind of put you in the picture of why it's quite an important subject to consider. So these are some of the things that have obviously helped build that quiz together. The other one, which I didn't put in the quiz, but obviously the fact that employers know that it's in their interests to look after women at this transitional stage in their lives and their careers. Because when you look overall over a career, it's actually not a long time in a career, and yet it's pretty much carnage, because women are then just left to kind of try and muddle through on their own. I talked a bit about who I was in the beginning of this presentation, but just to give you a bit of background. So yeah, I'm a mother of 2 children. My background before having children and setting up Bump and Glide was in communications and human resources. And what I've done is that once I had my children, I realized what I needed to fit, what I wanted to fix for myself if I was in that position again. And I sent out a questionnaire to about 100 people, not all people I knew, because I didn't want it to be skewed, but just to get their view and see what support they were lacking, and what they could have done with having help on more. 100% of the questionnaires came back saying that they would have liked to have more support. So I think those of you who are parents in the room, you know that often when you come across challenges, especially in those early days, you kind of think it must just be me. You know, everybody else seems to be managing. And nowadays, with the additional stress or pressure of social media, where people maybe just put a millisecond or a snippet of their happy life, you just then easily compare yourself to all those images and don't always appreciate that actually they may be struggling as well, but they're just not putting that forward. So as I said, I combined that communication experience with hypnobirthing training and perinatal educator training. Also realized, especially in the last few years, the impact of poor mental health on the clients that I work with. So I went on to train as a mental health first aider as well. All of those things together made me realize what I could actually do going forward to help people. So what I did was I thought about what it is people needed on both sides, because clearly mothers needed more help. But I came from a company who had the resources and the willpower to help as well. So I've pulled together ways of benefiting organizations as well as individuals. Overall, obviously, those of you who know me quite well know that I like to chat, I like to meet people, I like communication. So everything has to stem from communication. And poor communication leads to poorer outcomes. So by working from the onset with companies, you can improve the communication they have with their individuals, and which in turn increases staff motivation. I was on a workshop yesterday with our lovely friends at Get Set Solent as well, where we talked about how all the different generations, you know, you have the baby boomers, Generation X and Z, and you've got the alphas coming now, which are our smaller children, and how all different generations are working in different ways and expecting different things. Going forward, people are going to be expecting a lot more from their companies, from their organizations in terms of benefits. On the next slide, you'll see soon, but I'm talking about companies at the moment are offering more pay and they're offering more leave, but they're not necessarily offering anything in that interim period where women's confidence dips, where your self-esteem plummets, where you think, oh, it just must be me, I'm just no good at this anymore. Excuse me. So we need to look after people in this huge transition, which is going from, I don't know if you've heard the term maiden to mother. You know, when you become a mother, everything changes. It's not just your physical appearance that changes. Excuse me. Your mental, sorry. You may like to say anything you like about that for now whilst I get my voice back.
I completely, I've just done a little post on LinkedIn, because one of the things that has just really struck me is that normally you think of becoming a mother as an exciting journey, and actually when you stop and think about it, for a lot of people it's not. And when something positive happens, generally there's not a lot of support around, because everybody assumes it's positive.
Absolutely.
And actually when you kind of really think about it, it's, you know, there's lots of things around becoming a parent or unable to become a parent, or and then the transitions of parenthood and all of that kind of the melee that surrounds a baby, that's actually really, because it's normally considered positive, it's really something that I hadn't thought about in that way before. So
yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that, Heidi, because that's given my voice to come back. But also, yeah, I completely agree. And I think that also stems from the bad side. There's lots of good things to social media, but I think the bad side of it is that comparison. I don't know that if you know the expression of a flower doesn't look at the flower next to it, it just blooms, and I think everybody has their own way of blooming. And I think with so much comparison nowadays, you just think that you're never doing anything right. And, we live in a world that wants to be perfect. You want to always do things the right way. And yet motherhood is completely imperfect. It's crazy, it's noisy, it's mad. But equally, you have some really good times as well. And I think at the moment, we're going through a dip where there's a lot of talk about the negative side of things in terms of forums or social media posts, or you see the marketing magazines where you have the airbrush model pushing a pram, and she's obviously looking super like she's never had a baby in her life. So there has to be more of a balance. And I think it's how I work with my clients is working with the reality versus expectation in that respect. And I'll come on to a couple of things here. So the current trends, for example, I've talked about companies giving more pay and more leave. Well, here, you have the lady, the managing director of Twitter in Australia, who mentioned, we wanted to lead by example, and it plays into our diversity goal of making sure we have a minimum percentage of women in leadership roles. Now, a lot of this support also comes from the top. If people at the top show the example of the fact that we need to support our women and our parents whilst they're out of work, because let's face it, whether you're going on parental leave or you're going on leave of any kind, once you come back, things have evolved. Things have changed. Teams have changed, roles have changed, products have changed, whatever company you work in. So there needs to be more of an inclusion element when that person's on leave without being overpowering, because they need to be able to enjoy that period of their life. You can see from what I'm showing now that, things vary. Companies vary in terms of what they offer. So where I'm coming from is that there has to be a standard level of knowledge and education shared with everybody in terms of how this changes a woman, why it changes a woman. And the fact is, it can make her a better person as well. You have additional skill sets, you have extra patience most of the time. You have amazing creativity and innovation. You have to be creative. I've got a 6-year-old, well, almost 7-year-old, and a 5-year-old. I have to think on my feet because there are some fantastic questions coming out at the moment. So that's something that you should add to your CVs, additional creativity. But it's not just about that period. It's about the evolution and the flexibility when they return as well. And sitting down with them before they have their baby, especially when it's a first baby, to say, right, what are you known for in your company? What's your reputation? What are your skills? What do you enjoy doing? And really talk of them as that identity before they have a new identity of mother, which, due to hormones becomes the biggest pull for them at that time, especially in those early months and years. I thought I would put on this page also a fair few words actually about the perinatal period. You can look through them and pick out whichever ones you think about or that you know about, but these are generally some key words that I talk about and that I research and I read about and I work with my clients around. Things like the fourth trimester. you know, the fourth trimester is that the first 3 months after that baby, when, you know, you need to look after yourself, you need to not overdo it. I don't know how much you all know about that period, but for example, in Mali, in Africa, or in Asia, in other countries around the world, they honor the mother, you know, they give them that space to be able to accept the fact that they've just had a whole shift of identity, and they need that rest to recover. There seems to be a lot of focus on, understandably, postnatal depression nowadays because it's on the up. But not everybody has postnatal depression. However, a fair number of people have postnatal depletion. When you're pregnant, your body gives everything to that growing fetus. And when that happens, you are basically, unless you recalibrate your energy levels, you are going to be depleted because you're forever giving, giving, giving. From a mental state, when you're pregnant, it's all about the baby. How's the baby doing? How's the baby's growth? How's the baby? And the mother's care in terms of how she's growing the baby. So are you taking care of yourself so that the baby grows? Once the baby or babies have been born, the focus shifts completely solely to the baby in that respect. Some of you may be aware that there's a postnatal check after you've had a baby, 6 to 8 week check. That starts with the care of the baby, but if they run out of time, the mum doesn't get to look in. Unless the mama is feeling confident, she probably won't make another appointment to go and see somebody. Now, it's really, really important because going forward, that is the person who's caring essentially for, in the traditional family model, the core of the family. If she's weak, then she's not going to have the force or the energy to do it. A little personal story. Yes, Monday, I finished finally the Couch to 5K program, which was pretty satisfying, but I tried it a year ago and couldn't do it because I didn't have the core strength. And my youngest is 5 years old. So these are things that actually, if those things had been picked up on sooner, I would have had that strength to carry on sooner. Are there any words in that kind of cloud that kind of jump out at people, or that anybody's experienced in this room? And actually, Rob, if you could talk about it from a man's perspective, things that you've heard, or things as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many topics coming up in this slide of yours. It's quite amazing, all the different things that have to be thought about. From a sort of male perspective and an employer's perspective, I'm wondering, what's the biggest single issue that you think people should be aware of when a mother is returning to work?
I think how she's changed mentally. So the mental load, I think when you go, so what I hear most is once they've gone back to work, it's quite a big step going back to work because they suddenly realize that they've changed once they go back to work. They may be going back to the same role, for example, more often than not at the moment that they are, but they realize that they have a lot more of a mental load. It's like, how's my child getting on with the childminder at nursery? Or I wonder if they feel okay after having tried that thing last night, with the weaning. Or there are all these kind of little things. And actually, when you add all that up, it kind of takes your focus away. So when you're able to fully focus, you can carry on changing. So I think the mental load is quite a big deal. Also, I think women are worried when they go back. You may have heard of the motherhood penalty, or the motherhood bias, etc. It's all very much, they don't want to be passed on for promotion and stuff, just because they're now a mother. Employers sometimes think, oh well, yeah, obviously wrongly they shouldn't be because it's discrimination. But oh no, maybe, well, she's a mum, so maybe we won't give her that project because it means a couple of late nights without even talking to her about it. So yeah, things like that. I think it hasn't completely disappeared, that fear of becoming a mum, which is also quite devastating because people, next week I'm going to a fertility, like an infertility event in London, where mainly law firms, a lot of people in the law sector, are, putting off having children until later and finding out that they're then having a few issues to have children. So to talk about why it's important to address that element as well. Anybody else have any words that kind of pop out at them?
There's so many,
Yeah.
but all of them are meaningful for me personally, career-wise and parentally. I think it's really interesting to kind of reflect on some of them, but there's one that I don't actually know what it means, so I'm going to try and embarrass myself by saying it, but the underneath nutrition.
Yeah, good one.
I don't know what that means, so I would love to hear what that means.
I didn't know either.
Yeah,
No, me neither.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, so matrescence. It was a term that was coined by this anthropologist in the early 70s called Dana Raphael. And it means the fact of becoming a mother. So she described it as when a child becomes an adult, they go through adolescence. So their bodies change, their hormones change, their way of thinking changes, and they struggle to fit in this newfound identity. There's a lot of research and medical things around adolescence, but what this lady was saying, and there are lots more people now who are looking into it, mainly in the States and Australia, they've coined the term matrescence. So it's very much in the similar vein, when a woman becomes a mother, her body changes and it changes back and forward and whatever, it doesn't always go back to the same shape, very rarely, in fact, goes back to the same shape. And, mentally, hormonally, everything changes around her. And often, that whole feeling of, am I doing anything right? And I don't really feel like I fit in anymore. Or I don't really want to do this job anymore. It's just not me. Why can't I do this anymore? I used to be able to do it. And I think there's a lot of explanation around that fact of accepting the fact that we change, which society doesn't really like to accept at the moment. So that's what matrescence is. There's a brilliant talk, a TED talk that you can look up on this, which I can send you the link to if anybody wants to, or just get in touch with me and I can send you lots of links of this. But Dr. Alexandra Sachs, and she does a fantastic talk on that fact. And it's quite eye-opening because you kind of think, actually, yes, absolutely, it makes complete sense. But yeah, they just wanted a word for it.
Brilliant, thank you so much. That was really helpful to understand, but it makes so much sense because you have the different stages with, like you say, adolescence is such a well-known, documented process because everybody goes through it. And then menopause is becoming more commonly discussed, but only half the population goes through it. And then I guess the population that goes through this is potentially less than the half because of different situations, so it almost gets glossed over.
Yeah, it does. And I think it is kind of what is that oh, you had a baby, just get on with it type of mentality. And it's funny you said menopause, because a couple of weeks ago I was in a kind of a meeting with a number of ladies of different ages, and one of them was saying about, oh, you should probably put some sort of a menopause thing in policy into your workplace. And I was quite shocked by her reply, because she said, oh, well, I've been through it, other people have gone through it, why do we need to put anything else, in place? And I'm of the opposite thinking, in as much as I struggled with a lot of parts of that motherhood journey, and I've got through it and I'm fine, but that doesn't mean that I want everybody else to struggle as well. So actually, now that I saw why I struggled and I understand what could have helped me, I'm trying to help more people, going forward. So yeah, understanding matrescence. Another one is maternal gatekeeping. I don't know if you've heard of that terminology term before, but that's, you often find women who say, oh, my other half doesn't help at all, or he just doesn't get it, or XYZ, which we all have. You're like, oh, why don't you know I need to do this and this and this? But then the maternal gatekeeping side of things is actually you have a whole cohort of very successful or powerful women who become mothers, and subconsciously often they want to keep, because they're no longer in the workplace, they want to keep some sort of a power and some sort of control. So they try and keep everything the way they like to do it. So it's kind of like they then say, oh, he doesn't do anything, but then actually when the person, or he or she, whoever the partner is, doesn't do something, then they don't do it right anyway, even if they try. So it's kind of, yeah, the gatekeeper of the house is the mother of the house type thing. So that's another, a psychological thing that needs to be taken into account. So hopefully from this slide and all my chat, you've realised what a huge space this subject is. And there isn't a one-size-fits-all approach. So post-pandemic specifically, there's obviously a lot more focus on well-being, a lot more focus on mental health and how companies can help. And there are lots of apps that have been released and are being used, mental health apps. They are great to fit a certain area of expertise. However, this specific thing I find is that actually people just want somebody to talk to. Not just talk to on a one-off basis, but somebody who they can trust and who've been on them with their journey. Some people I've spoken to say, it's kind of like having a cheerleader, or when everything was changing with midwives, I was the person who knew that couple the best all the way through because they'd had 4 different midwives. It's a very vulnerable time for a woman and for a couple, especially for that first time, not to mention if they've gone through years of waiting for that pregnancy, which is often the case as well. So before I wrap up, my last slide, you can find lots of everything of these details on my website, and I've got a YouTube channel where I've put some little videos about different things as well that you can find out more about. But this page is on my website, and I've basically split various areas of support depending on what the needs are. So it can be anything from, birth preparation. There's an amazing fear around birth, which is sad, but normal because we're a society that thrives on drama. So we need to kind of, it's all about education and knowledge. If you understand more about all these different processes, whether it's birth or life, it can make things a little bit easier. So yeah, anything from a 2-hour session to 18-month support is quite a varied approach, really. I'm also working on an idea of lunch and learns and like a manager's workshop. I'm looking to, obviously I'm a business, so I need some of this to be paid. However, the more I look into various things of all those words you just saw on that slide, the more I would like to just shout about it. So if anybody wants me to just run a talk just like that on an afternoon or over Zoom, then just shout, and I'm very happy to help anybody do that, just to get that awareness and that knowledge out there, really. But yeah, I hope you found that really helpful, and let me know if there's anything else you want to know about further, either directly or in the questions now, and I'll be happy to chat more.